Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Today's briefing is about the verdict in the Tyre Nichols murder case. It's the federal trial, state one hasn't taken place yet, but the verdict was pretty much predictable, and I'll tell you why. White supremacy is sophisticated. It stands unmoving when it can, but when the winds of change start blowing hard, white supremacy understands that it has to bend like a tree branch to avoid being broken. White supremacy does that occasionally, but just like the tree branch, once the winds of change stop blowing quite so hard, the branch returns to its original position. This is the reason why whenever black folks think that they're on a roll, that they're getting white supremacy to make some changes, they look up about a year or two later and things have gone back to the same old, same old. See, it's not enough just to bring some pressure for a while. You can't just push white supremacy until it moves. You gotta push that sucker until it breaks. White power believes in jealously guarding its institutions, and it does it by using corrupt sellout Negroes to help it occasionally rebrand itself. Whenever the winds of change are blowing hard and white supremacy finds, okay, we gotta switch it up a little bit. Let's bring in some of these little house Negroes, and we'll put them out front, and they'll say that everything is fine and that America's progressive and moving forward, but in reality, it's like the plantations. Massa identifies some obedient Negroes and lets them be the ones standing in front of the big house, and Massa points and says, see how diverse my big house is. This plantation is so diverse. In reality, it's nothing more than a bunch of mascots for Team White Supremacy. And these Negroes' job is to protect Massa's house. We see it in pro sports, we see it in politics, and of course, we see it with the police. Tyree Nichols was heinously murdered, beaten to death. And the 5 officers who did it, yeah, they were black all right, but as we've always said, blackness is not merely having a requisite amount of melanin. It also encompasses an ideology, a mentality, a mindset. And the problem happens to be for a lot of these Negroes, they're on Team White Supremacy. White supremacy could not have possibly stood as long as it has without having a bunch of collaborators who are complicit with it on the inside. And a lot of these guys, they go to work in some sort of position that keeps them close to Massa. Now, the 5 thugs, the 5 criminals who killed that man, they were charged in his death, and the federal trial has taken place. Now, 2 of them pleaded guilty and testified against the others, but that didn't matter too much because the fix was in from the jump. And although this was a federal case, as you would expect from the Biden DOJ, the entire purpose was to make sure that they cut off any possibility of hitting these guys up with serious charges at the federal level. That was the point of this little exercise. 3 of these criminals were convicted of obstruction of justice and witness tampering. That's it, they're basically a paperwork charge. Only 1 of them was found guilty of depriving Mr. Nichols of his civil rights and deliberate indifference resulting in serious bodily injury. Prior to this, 2 of the 5 criminals had already pleaded guilty to excessive force and witness tampering. They were found not guilty of depriving Nichols of his civil rights resulting in his death, and that was the harshest charge they faced. The jurors deliberated nearly 6 hours before returning these verdicts. And these criminals are going to be sentenced in January, but whatever the hell it is, it won't be resulting in very much. The white media will try to play it up like, oh, well, they could be looking at 20 years. We already know how it works at the federal level. They give slaps on the wrist. The jury was comprised of 8 women, 4 of them being white, 4 of them being black, and 8 men, 2 of them being black, 2 Asian, and 4 white. So what that basically means was, out of a jury of 16 people, only 6 of them were black. But as I've always said, the composition of the jury matters. There's a psychology that goes along with the jurors, but during the voir dire process, if you got a prosecutor who's basically looking to get the defendant off the hook, acting basically as a de facto member of the defense, it doesn't really matter. You can engineer an acquittal during the voir dire process, during the jury selection process. The feds understand how that one works. So Merrick Garland's DOJ strikes again. Whenever these guys decide that, black folks are pushing us to a corner, they're trying to make us actually enforce the law. Black person's been harmed and they think we're supposed to enforce the law on their behalf. No, we got the fix in. This is what's going on here, but understand something. There's 2 primary rules to understand about white supremacy in this circumstance. 1, everything that happens under white supremacy is done for the benefit of the white supremacist. And secondly, nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. Please don't go getting confused by the fact that the 5 thugs in blue in this case happen to be black. There's a whole lot of Negroes who have willingly acted as guard dogs for white supremacy, thinking that they're on the team, and as soon as they get their butts in a crack, white supremacy has no problem throwing them overboard. They never learn, but then again, if they were capable of learning, they wouldn't be guard dogs for white supremacy, now would they? But that's the thing to understand here. These Negroes thought to themselves that they were more or less untouchable because white supremacy allowed them to run around harming people so long as they were black. And as soon as white supremacy saw an opportunity to go ahead and put them in jails, like, hey, you're just a bunch of other niggers, that's all there is to it. But our badge, but nothing. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. When white supremacy is done with its tool, it breaks its tool. Now, as far as this verdict goes, a lot of you might be saying, oh, what's going on here? What's happening, first of all, is these little bigots, they didn't do this for these guys to do them any favors. What they're doing is they're trying to slither their way back to the old status quo. They've been trying to do this for the last 4 or 5 years. The uprisings of 2020 put pressure on these prosecutors because they realized the public would punish them if they didn't start punishing the police. And as a result, they're like, okay, I guess we got to do something for a while. Now they're trying to tiptoe their way back to the old normal, back to the way it was before. That's what this was about. This verdict was meant to be nothing more than a public expression of giving cover to what these prosecutors want to be a string of acquittals of janky verdicts like this. And they're hoping that this is going to act as cover for white cops who murder black people. That's what the entire point of this is. That way they can go ahead and point to this case and say, remember when Tyree Nichols was beaten to death? You had those 5 black cops. Why, they got a slap on the wrist after they murdered him. So that proves that when these white cops get away scot-free, why, it's not racial at all. It's just the system. Why, people just like the police. That's what they're trying to tiptoe their way back to. It's white power trying to manufacture a talking point for itself. But as we saw with Mohammed Noor and other black cops, whenever these guys make the mistake of killing a white person, they get convicted right away. And it's no slap on the wrist. It's no, well, he got convicted of excessive force or a witness tampering. It's like, nah, you going down for murder. You're going down for homicide. And the time that you get ain't going to be no penny any 1 or 2 years. You're going to be doing at least 7 to 10. They make sure if you're black, you're going to be getting some serious time. Understand, there's a program at work here. As odious as this is a message that's being sent. And it's the Democrats who are sending it, showing that when it comes to anti-black racism, that's a bipartisan issue. And speaking of bipartisan, when it comes to the blue wall, black cops are always trying to pretend as if somehow they're on the side of the community, while they're also on the side of the same white supremacist thugs that we've been fighting against. That's the game that they try to play. They try to palm themselves off as, oh, I'm down with the community. No, they're down with team white supremacy is what they are. These guys, they have all their associations there. They're trying to get themselves a little pension from this white supremacist system. And they also identify with it. They claim that they don't, but they do. And they know it. That's part of the reason why when it comes to these black cops, you notice that they don't even try to play that game of, oh, gee, I don't know why the neighborhood don't like us. I don't know why black folks don't like us. Black cops, they know exactly why it is. Because a lot of them have chosen to be part of the problem. They're damn sure not part of the solution. So this verdict needs to stand as just another reminder to us all. We don't have any friends. As the black community, we have a right, a duty, and an obligation to protect ourselves from violence, whether it comes from criminals on the streets or thugs with badges who ambush us. We have a right to be safe no matter where we are. And if somebody tries to harm us, we have a right to protect ourselves, no matter who it is who's trying to harm us. And if we have other black people who are being harmed, we have a right, a duty, and an obligation to protect them. Tyree Nichols was beaten to death within earshot of his own mother's house. What's happening here is an ethno-judicial strategy that they're trying to pursue. Basically, the judicial equivalent of containment. Now, this was the federal trial, and there's still state trials regarding murder that these thugs have to look forward to. But after the verdicts that we've had in the federal case, and it's very odd that the federal case comes first, that happens occasionally, but not often, so it's out of character for it to happen in this case. But nonetheless, seeing how the way that this federal case went, anyone want to lay odds about whether or not these guys are going to be getting convicted only of smaller charges at the state level too? Which, of course, was the entire point from the very beginning. The community needs to understand that it's under siege. And a lot of the thugs and criminals that white supremacy sends to harm black people are folks who look like the very people that they're victimizing. That's deliberate. It's white supremacy trying to show, see how much power we got, why we can find a few bootlicks, put them on the payroll, and as long as they're going after you, they can get away with it. It's open season on you no matter who wants to go after you. Well, it's time for black folks to declare open season closed. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Wen, Frederica Moore, Corey Monroe, Shiva Boone, and Christopher Pittman. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.